If you never experienced it, seen it, or even heard of it, I genuinely envy you. If you were there for it, you know how special this franchise truly was. You see, Mass Effect is one of, if not the greatest gaming trilogy of all time. Perhaps even the greatest gaming franchise so far. You see, when I think about Mass Effect, a popular saying tends to come to mind. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Looking at each game in isolation, I wouldn't say any of them really qualify to be in the GOAT debate. They hover somewhere between being classics, games exceptional for their time still being worth the replay today, and simply being categorized as playable. Good for their time and just playable by today's standards. Because when you look at the trilogy as a whole though, that's when you see that this was truly something special. If it wasn't clear by the intro, I'm a little bit biased to put it mildly. Mass Effect has always held a special place in my heart. A lot of my firsts actually occurred in Mass Effect. It was the first RPG I ever played. The first game where my in-game choice actually impacted the overarching story. The first game where I was able to build friendships and pursue romantic relationships with characters I actually grew to love. The Mass Effect trilogy felt like a gaming series made just for me, incorporating aspects of established games that I already loved, or adding in new game mechanics that I never even knew I even wanted. If I was to describe what the experience of playing Mass Effect is like, it's kind of like watching a sci-fi epic on the same scale as Star Wars, where you get to choose your friends, significant other, and the endings. What makes it so good is that not only was it a pioneer treading new ground, but the execution was borderline perfect, up until the last 30 minutes at least. But a little bit more on that later. For those of you who are new to the series, you may be asking, what is the Mass Effect trilogy? What's this sci-fi epic all about? Well, the Mass Effect universe is set in the not too distant future, with the main plot taking place between the years 2183 and 2186. To bring you up to speed on how humanity got to this point, after discovering ancient alien technology on Mars, humanity went through a scientific boom, so to speak, unlocking faster than light travel and developing a host of new futuristic technologies based on the new field of science called Mass Effect physics. Just as humanity began to explore the stars beyond their solar system, they discovered numerous advanced alien species scattered throughout the Milky Way, with an already established galactic interspecies government called the Council. Now, humanity as the new kid on the block aims to establish itself on the galactic stage. Now, the first thing you notice early on in Mass Effect is how established and expansive the lore is. As you play the game, you get to see and interact with numerous aliens of different species. With each interaction, you get to learn a little bit more about some of the individuals from each species, as well as their people's history. Many of the species also have their own stereotypical behavior, such as the Volus, who kinda resemble dwarves in fantasy games, who have a reputation as traders and merchants with not so moral practices. In addition to the in-game interactions, the game also provides a voice lore encyclopedia called the Codex, containing all the information on all the aliens, political factions, mercenary groups, and key historical events. With all this world building, the Mass Effect universe ends up feeling so alive. You can't help but wanting to learn more, trying to see how deep this rabbit hole actually ends up going. Without going into spoilers, the main plot basically revolves around the great, and I have to say the great, Commander Shepard, a decorated Human Alliance officer and his team, the Normandy crew, as they work to save the galaxy from a mysterious galactic threat. The game starts with Shepard on a mission to evaluate his candidacy for the Spectres, elite covert operatives who only report directly to the Council and are basically above the law. Shepard's admission as the first human Spectre is seen as a huge political opportunity for humanity to actually raise its standing within the community. During the mission, Shepard ends up uncovering an ancient alien device belonging to the now extinct Protheans that warns of a pending threat. Now in a race against time, Shepard ends up seeking to discover the mysteries behind the Prothean extinction and ultimately saving the galaxy. So, not the most creative plot out there. Now, the plot's good, but I'm not gonna lie to you and say that it's the best plot ever. I've seen more creative, outside-the-box and ambitious plots in other works of fiction. You see, what makes the narrative so memorable, besides the rich world that it's set in, are the amazing companions and side characters. Honestly, I don't even feel me saying they're amazing gives these characters enough credit. They are really that good. The emotions you end up experiencing from playing the trilogy from start to finish, really getting into the lore, engaging with all the side characters, and just immersing yourself in the universe as a whole are incredible. I speak from experience. There were quite a few times, particularly in Mass Effect 3, where I was left in tears. Tears of joy, mind you, but tears nonetheless. You genuinely end up caring for these characters as you go through the highs and lows with them as Shepard. You end up feeling all of it. Now, despite me writing Mass Effect since the start of this video, even I can admit the games aren't perfect. The Mass Effect games aren't better than modern games. The likes of Cyberpunk 2077, Horizon Forbidden West, and Elden Ring are just better games. For their time, the Mass Effect games were amazing, exceptional even, but they aren't better than modern releases from a game perspective. Things like gameplay, graphics, cinematics, and all the other things that go into making a game amazing, Mass Effect doesn't beat them in that regard. What makes Mass Effect truly stand out is that the story is so damn good. You see, to really appreciate the trilogy, you really need to play it from start to finish. You see, Mass Effect 1 or ME1 does the world building. It introduces you to the world of Mass Effect. In all honesty, I don't love this game. I find it the hardest to play. It's slow, the gameplay's dated, copy-pasted environments, repetitive side quests, and the goddamn Mako. Look, it's difficult, but I'm telling you that it's worth it. I'm not saying it's easy to get through, but it's still a good game, narratively speaking at least. The best moments are the dialogue segments during missions and in the ship. If you pay attention to the story, it starts to build up. It gets you engrossed and invested in the Mass Effect franchise. Mass Effect 2, arguably the best entry, comes in guns blazing with a dynamic start to the game. The game in general feels a lot more refined with a more focused plot and substantially improved gameplay. If Mass Effect is about building up the world, Mass Effect 2 is about getting you engrossed in the characters, getting you to really bond with your crew, really building on the relationships you had in Mass Effect and developing the relationships with the new characters. It's a lot more personal, especially as you do the loyalty missions for each crew member. You see, in short, the Mass Effect 2 gets you to really care, to really developing those emotional stakes. Not to say that this wasn't done in Mass Effect, this aspect is just a lot more prominent in Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 3. Provided you heeded my advice and played through 1 and 2, this is when them feels start coming on thick. All that world building, relationship development, you start seeing the payoffs. You see, what makes Mass Effect special beyond providing you with a rich world and interesting villain, you're actually given a reason to fight in the conflict. You got emotional stakes in this war. You're not saving a galaxy of nameless NPCs who you hardly care for, no. You're fighting for innocent victims whose stories you've seen since the beginning of the game. You're fighting for your comrades, you're fighting for your friends, and you're fighting for your loved ones. I'm almost tempted to say the experience is an emotional roller coaster of sorts, but it's not quite. Rather than going through repeated highs and lows, you just keep building up. Every moment keeps taking you to a higher level. The game is filled with all these epic moments, with each one being more impactful than the last, and at the same time setting up for the next. The feels you go through in this game, man. Look, I cried several times in Mass Effect 3. I teared up when I was carrying the Genophage. I was crying when I got peace on Rana. And I was straight up bawling when I had to say goodbye to my crew before the final mission. Those farewells hit so damn hard, my guy. If you know, you know. Now, you can't speak about Mass Effect 3 without addressing the elephant in the room, the endings. When the game launched, the reception to the endings was awful. Saying it was a disaster would be putting it mildly. The community as a whole demanded DLC to fix this thing. I can't tell you how many random online petitions I signed personally to get BioWare to do just that. It was that bad. Some peeps even believed in the indoctrination theory, which basically boiled down to Shepard having a bad dream, kinda like the Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 ending. Funnily enough, the complaints eventually ended up working. BioWare ended up releasing the free Extended Cuts DLC. This didn't necessarily change the endings, but provided enough explanation through added cutscenes to make it at the very least palatable. The endings are still unfortunately a blemish to an otherwise epic series though, but not like Game of Thrones bad where it kills all rewatchability in its entirety. It's just that with a story that for the most part hovers between an 8 and a 9, the drop to a 6 or 7 at the very end is somewhat disappointing. The story's still great, but it could have been perfect if the endings were just a little bit better in all honesty. If BioWare just gave the game a little bit more time in the oven. While you won't be fully satisfied, thanks to all the DLC which is included in the Mass Effect Legendary Edition Trilogy Remaster, I do think new and old players will still be able to enjoy the ending and the series as a whole. As ultimately, at the risk of sounding corny, it's not really about the destination but the journey itself. Look, I get it. Determining the best video game franchise or gaming trilogy of all time is kind of a daunting task. It's kind of like determining the NBA MVP or football Ballon d'Or winner. It's not just about the stats and the trophies, which Mass Effect already has in spades, though admittedly not the most. Part of the determination lies in the subjective eye test. From an objective standpoint, from sales and awards alone, the Mass Effect trilogy has already staked its claim as one of the best. When it comes to that eye test though, it is in my humble opinion, the Mass Effect trilogy provides arguably the best experience in gaming. And for that reason, to me at least, it's goated. I'll acknowledge that its position is not firm, and there are many other franchises, to say the least, that can also stake their own claim. However, one thing is certain, and I'm sure all players will agree, the Mass Effect trilogy is a classic.